Beneath the collection of verbal thoughts and processes that you call your mind, there is a hidden process. One that influences everything you do and operates continually and without your knowing it. There are two distinct parts of the mind. The explicit, verbal part that does a lot of what we think of as the actual thinking. Let's call that system 2. But our mind does much, much more than that. When your hand knows how to catch a ball before you've had time to calculate its parabola and velocity on paper. When the smell of cookies brings back memories of your grandma's kitchen. When you know a friend is angry just by the way they enter the room, even if you couldn't explain exactly how you know. That's your System 1 at work. So, System 1 and System 2. Remarkably descriptive names, aren't they? Well, we have Daniel Kahneman to thank for them, as well as for, basically the entire field of behavioral economics. He was a pretty cool guy. Anyway, in his most famous book, Thinking Fast and Slow, he describes these two systems, System 1 and 2. System 1 is the thinking fast bit of that. It's immediate, intuitive, and automatic. If I show you the equation 4 plus 6, your mind immediately jumps to the answer 10. You don't need to add the numbers up normally. Your mind says 10 as soon as you recognize the problem. That's System 1. It handles things like telling you the answer to 4 plus 6, or understanding simple sentences, or driving a car on an open highway. Lots and lots and lots and lots of things. All those things can happen unconsciously, with almost no effort. If you make a conscious effort, you can control your breathing. But most of the time, it just happens without you thinking about it. Similarly with driving. On the highway, you don't really need to think about what you're doing. You can let your System 1 take over and do other things with your brain. Please don't when there are other cars around, though. Nice thing about breathing is you don't do it worse when you're not thinking about it. In contrast to System 1, System 2, or thinking slow, is analytic and effortful. If I give you the problem 16 times 23, your System 1 is stumped. You know you could solve it with pencil and paper, or maybe just in your head if you're clever, but that takes effort, this feeling of trying. That feeling is System 2, or at least a core part of it. System 2 is responsible for solving those harder math problems, or keeping you walking at an unusually fast speed, or looking for a specific person in a group of people. Really, anything that involves what we think of as concentration. It's worth noting here that System 1 and System 2 aren't literal systems in the brain. There's no grouping of neurons that constitutes the systems. This isn't like a left brain, right brain kind of thing. When we say that System 2 handles difficult calculations, that's just shorthand for difficult calculations are an effortful and voluntary mental process that consumes a high level of energy and attention. Let's get back to the characterization, though. System 2 is more accurate and much better at many types of thinking than System 1. Its primary weakness is laziness. System 2 takes much more energy and effort to run, which we can measure in, say, glucose, how much of the brain's fuel it uses for a specific task. Yes, glucose. Your brain literally runs on sugar. To avoid using so much of the brain's resources, System 1 takes over most of the brain's tasks, and only asks help from System 2 when it encounters trouble. Trouble for System 2 takes many forms. When it runs into a question that it doesn't know the answer to, such as 16 times 23, or when something observed interrupts its model of the world. If System 1 encounters something unexpected, like a barking cat or a stranger's car in your driveway, it consults System 2 to figure out what exactly is going on. At the same time, System 2, the smart one, is continuously monitoring System 1 to notice when it ought to jump in and do something. When you almost blurt out something offensive but catch yourself just in time, that's your System 2 jumping in at the last minute and taking control. This arrangement works pretty well most of the time. System 1 is wonderfully efficient when it comes to doing familiar things in normal situations, and System 2, for the most part, activates just enough to solve the things System 1 can't. There are lots and lots of situations where that interaction breaks down, and I'm going to be talking quite a bit about those. But for now, I'd like to spend the rest of this video on just one of those mistakes. Here it is. We only have so much power to run System 2, and when you're focusing on one concentrated task, it can be very difficult to focus on another. I'm going to show you a 20-second video from a study done at Harvard. Your job, yes, you have a job, this video watching business isn't all just sitting back and letting me do the talking. Your job is to count the number of times that the players wearing white pass the basketball. Get to it. So if you were watching carefully, you probably saw them pass the ball 15 times. But if you haven't seen this video before and you were like most people, you probably didn't notice the gorilla walk across the screen and thump its chest 10 seconds in. If there had been sensors on you as you counted the passes, they would have shown your pupils dilating, your heart rate increasing, and your muscles tensing slightly. All signs of cognitive stress. Your System 2 was working vigorously watching the players. Doing that, it took so much energy from your limited budget of attention, System 1 couldn't do its standard monitoring, and couldn't notice the gorilla. That most definitely violates System 1's standard models of the world. Unless you live a very strange life. Anyway, this study illustrates just how blind we can be under the load of a difficult cognitive task. They affect our ability to do other simple tasks too, such as driving on the freeway. Moral of the story is, don't watch people pass basketballs while driving. Somewhat more seriously, effortful tasks like conversation can interfere with tasks like driving. For that reason, it's probably obvious that engaging in philosophical conversation about the origins of the universe is not advisable while, say, merging into dense traffic. But even just chatting with a friend in the same situation can overload your System 2. Most people will avoid that instinctively anyway, but this whole allocated attention business isn't always immediately obvious. Most people find the results of the gorilla study very surprising. One of the most striking things about people's response is how certain they were afterwards that they couldn't have missed the gorilla. And that illustrates an important point, one that not only applies to this study, but to many of the subjects I'll be covering throughout this series. We're not just blind to the markedly obvious, we're blind to our own blindness. Thanks for watching, and if you want to learn more interesting stuff about how your mind works and how to make it work better, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you next time.